Hey everyone. So the NHL season is basically over except for that one stupid makeup game tonight between Florida and Boston, and that game will determine who wins the Eastern Conference. If Boston loses, Tampa Bay wins the conference. If Boston wins, then they win the conference. But that's the only game left this year, so I figured I could start doing some end of the season stuff. And I just want to say before we get going, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do, because tomorrow is going to be a big day video wise. I'm going to be doing my playoff predictions, and I'm going to be previewing every series once we know after tonight what the matchups will be for sure. The Atlantic Division still hasn't been settled yet, but once we find out the matchups for sure, tomorrow I'm going to be previewing every series in the first round, and I'll probably split that into two videos. I'll do the Western Conference one video and the Eastern Conference another video. But definitely, if you don't want to miss that, so hit that subscribe button and be ready tomorrow for that. But right now, I want to look at my standings predictions from the beginning of the year before the season started, and look at how things actually turned out. And spoiler, I was wrong about a lot. So let's get started here with the Atlantic Division. Now here on the left is what my predictions were at the beginning of the season, and here on the right is how things ended up, and that little X next to the team name denotes playoff team. So let's see, back in the end of September, beginning of October, I thought Toronto would win the Atlantic Division. That obviously did not happen. They were quite a bit behind Tampa Bay and Boston this year, and they finished third. But they are a playoff team. I did get the three playoff teams from the Atlantic correct, and I was correct in that only three teams would make it. But the order I definitely got wrong. Up here, we don't know who finishes first and second yet. That gets determined tonight, but it really doesn't matter. I overestimated Toronto at the beginning of this season, and I underestimated Boston. After that, I thought Ottawa would finish fourth, but obviously they had a absolutely disastrous season, and they're down in seventh. Montreal, I figured wouldn't be very good, and I was fairly close on that. I guessed them to finish fifth. They finished sixth. Buffalo, I thought they would be better than they were. I thought they needed to take a bit of a step in the right direction this year. I didn't think they'd be a playoff team or anything, but I thought they would be better than what they have been, but that has not been the case, and they finished not only dead last in the Atlantic Division, dead last in the entire league, so not good for Buffalo. Florida, they surprised me this year. They almost got into the playoffs. I had them finishing seventh. I thought they were going to be near the bottom of the league. But they ended up having a really good second half of the season and almost made the playoffs, but not quite. And I thought Detroit would finish last. They didn't have a great year, but they still were better than I expected, and they finished fifth. So I got the playoff teams right and the non-playoff teams right, but the order not even close. So some good, some bad there with my predictions. Over to the Metro now. I predicted Pittsburgh to win the Metro. That didn't happen, but they still had a 100-point season, and they finished second, so I wasn't too far off there. I was very far off with the New York Rangers. I had them finishing second. They finished dead last. Much like Montreal, the Rangers, and Ottawa, the Rangers have had a disastrous season this year, and they just fired Alain Vigneault. Video on that coming up. But yeah, not good for the Rangers. Now, I had Columbus finishing third. They finished fourth, so I wasn't too far off there. Washington, I thought they were going to drop off a little this year. I've had them finishing fourth, still making the playoffs, but as a wild card team, and I thought that we were going to see some drop off in their play, especially they lost a lot of depth up front. I and they really surprised me this year. They won the division again. That doesn't mean anything that they're going to do anything good in the playoffs, but they won the division again, and really really surprised me. Philadelphia is another team that surprised me. I figured Philly would make the playoffs because they really had to after missing last year. They needed to make the playoffs this year, but I had them squeaking in as the second wild card. They finished third, although they weren't. They were only like a point away from being the second wild card. But they finished third, and they'll face Pittsburgh in the first round. So that's a pretty good season for Philadelphia, and they needed to have a good season this year. I was spot on with Carolina finishing sixth. I was spot on with the Islanders finishing seventh. I knew neither of those teams were going to have enough to make the playoffs in a very, very difficult division. And where I was dead wrong about the New Jersey Devils. They were a last-place team last year. I figured they weren't going to turn it around that quickly, and they'd be a last-place team again this year. That was not the case. They've made the playoffs. They're the second wild card team, but they were higher than that in the standings for most of the season. Columbus and Philly caught them towards the end, but great year for New Jersey, and we'll see what they can do in the playoffs. So I was right about some things here. I was wrong about quite a few others too. Shifting over to the Western Conference, Central Division. Well, I had Nashville winning the division, and Nashville won the division. I had Dallas finishing second after they're supposedly winning the off season. They made a bunch of signings and were thought to be a playoff team. They brought in Ken Hitchcock to be their coach, and they did not finish second. They finished sixth and missed the playoffs. Not good for Dallas. They expected a lot more this year. Minnesota, I was spot on finishing third. I had Chicago finishing fourth. I knew Chicago was going to drop off this year. Because they were in cap trouble. They've lost a lot of really good players. They've had to bring up a lot of young kids, especially on the back end. Their defense was not very good this year. They have an aging Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith, and then some mediocre defensemen and a lot of young kids. And losing Corey Crawford for most of the year also really hurt Chicago, but they finished dead last. I did not expect them to drop off that far. So not a good year for the Blackhawks. St. Louis, I had finishing fifth and missing the playoffs. They finished fifth and missed the playoffs by 1 point. They were really close, but didn't get there. Winnipeg, I had finishing sixth. I didn't think Winnipeg was ever really going to put it together. I knew they had the talent to be a good team, but goaltending was a huge issue, and they just never seemed to be able to put it together and play to their potential. Well, this year they did. They had over 100 points. Connor Hellebuck should be in the Vezina conversation. He has had a tremendous year in goal for Winnipeg, and they finished second behind President's Trophy winning Nashville. So really, really good year for Winnipeg, and they really surprised me. And another team that really, really surprised me, Colorado. They were the laughingstock of the NHL last season. Just an abysmal year. And I knew they'd be better this year, but I still saw them as a last place team and probably a team that didn't come close to the playoffs. Well, Nathan McKinnon had an MVP type season. They've gotten a lot better this year, and they won last night against St. Louis to get themselves into the playoffs. So Colorado in one season goes from being the worst team in the league to a playoff team, and I did not see that coming. So congratulations to the Avalanche. Fantastic season for them. So it's, again, a few things right, a lot of things wrong. Definitely some surprises in the Central Division, and certainly some surprises out here in the Pacific Division. I had Edmonton winning the division. I thought last season was their breakout season, and then they were just going to keep it rolling, and they were going to be a top team in the league for years to come. boy, was I wrong. Oh my God, they had a horrendous year. Connor McDavid still over 100 points. He was fantastic. The rest of the team sucked. The rest of the team absolutely sucked. Their goaltending sucked. Their defense sucked. Their other forwards sucked. Everyone sucked except for McDavid. Atrocious year for Edmonton. They ended up finishing sixth, not anywhere near the playoffs. They were never really in playoff position at all year long. Just horrendous. Anaheim ahead finishing second. Well, they did finish second, but probably not in the way anyone expected. They had an abysmal first half of the year, mostly because of injuries. Everybody was out. Came on really strong in the second, and then with a win yesterday and a Sharks loss, they took over second place in the Pacific. So their route there was probably a lot tougher than a lot of people expected it to be, but they still finished second. I had Calgary finishing third. Calgary was a disappointment for me this year. I really thought they should have been a playoff team. They have a good roster when you look at it on paper. They just couldn't get it done. They went on a really long losing streak right at the end of the year, and it killed any playoff hopes they had. So big-time disappointment from the Flames. I had the Kings finishing fourth, and they did that. They finished fourth and made the playoffs. So after missing last year, they got it together and are a playoff team this year. I had the Sharks finishing fifth. The Sharks surprised me this year. I thought they were an old team on the decline, and they weren't going to be as good this year. I had them missing the playoffs. They didn't do that. They finished third. They're a playoff team. They get a very tough matchup with the Ducks in the first round, but I will be very excited to watch that series, and they've been better than I expected this year. Arizona, I had finishing sixth. I thought they would be an improved team this year. Still not ready for the playoffs, but a better team than they have been in the last couple of years. That was not the case. They still finished last. I keep thinking that Arizona's gonna get better, and they just never do. I don't know what to do with that team. They just always seem to finish last, no matter what improvements they try to make. Vancouver I had finishing seventh. They did that, and I thought Vegas would finish dead last because expansion team. What expansion team doesn't finish last? Well, Vegas, because they just go and win the division. I did not see this coming. I don't think anyone saw this coming, so I'm not alone in this pick. But what a season for the Vegas Golden Knights. Unbeatable at home. Incredible atmosphere at their home rink. Great crowd, and a bunch of cast-offs from other teams bonded together and not only became a playoff team, became a first-place team, which is really unbelievable. They've got Marc-Andre Fleury in net. They've had great seasons from a lot of different players up front, especially William Karlsson. What the heck was that? Coming out of Columbus, where he was a bottom six defensive-minded forward, to having 40-plus goals this year. Like, where the heck did that come from? David Perron had a great year. Riley Smith had a great year. Just incredible season for the Vegas Golden Knights. And now they get to experience playoff hockey, which is a whole new ball game. So we'll see how they can do in the playoffs. They've got a tough matchup against the LA Kings, who are a veteran team with a lot of playoff experience. But I'm really excited to watch the Golden Knights in the playoffs. So as you can see, I got some things right, and I got quite a few things wrong. I think that's how predictions usually work out. This season was pretty unpredictable. A lot of things happened that we didn't foresee, especially Edmonton's collapse and the Golden Knights' rise to prominence. So, again, I'll be doing playoff predictions tomorrow, and I'll also be previewing every series once we know what the matchups will be for sure. So, thank you guys very much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out the website. Links in the description. Check us out on social media. Links are also in the description. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.